while he's talking, listen. 2 ears, 1 mouth. I think God was trying to tell us something to salespeople.
We communicate in many ways by radio, television, telephone, computer. Those are the things that help us to communicate. But communication really occurs between people. The issue is not how or why, but one of communicating effectively. Now, basically, there are 4 ways we communicate with one another: writing, reading, speaking, and listening. On which of these 4 do you suppose we spend most of our time? Well, according to recent studies, writing takes about 9% of our day, or 45 minutes. Reading takes 16%, or 75 minutes. Speaking takes 30%, or 2.5 hours, while listening takes 45%, or 3.5 hours of each working day. Between those last 2, speaking and listening, we spend about 6 hours out of every working day. 6 hours. Hard to believe, isn't it? But the study showed that to be true. Certainly, speaking is important to a salesperson in dealing with prospects and customers. So let's talk a little about speaking. There are 8 good rules for speaking effectively. Be clear. Most of us try to be clear, except that in some cases the material we're covering is so familiar to us that we forget how new it is to the listener, and we just rattle it off. Here's an example.
Harry, Paul.
Paul?
Harry, Frank. Paul, Harry here is our new salesman. I thought you'd like to tell him how you sell all those cars.
Well, Harry, welcome. We're glad to have you here. Say, aren't you gonna take any notes?
Harry, it's really not all that hard to be top salesperson to sell a lot of cars. Remember, top performers know the product and are willing to spend time answering all the customers' questions. Treat all customers courteously, even those who are just looking. Don't forget to be well-dressed and groomed to make a favorable first impression. Customers like a salesperson who is friendly, enthusiastic, honest, provides assistance, knows what he's talking about, and willing and able to negotiate a fair price. Got it, good. I'm glad, because there's a customer on the floor, and now is as good a time as any for you to start. Go ahead, Harry. Good luck. Oh, Harry, remember, sell at the customer speed, okay?
Well, maybe that's a little extreme. But the famous John Machida does make a point. Be clear and give your listener a chance. Confirm understanding. Many people are embarrassed to admit they didn't understand something that was said to them, so they just let it go. But if it's something important, like details about the warranty, for instance, make sure the other person understands by asking. Did I make that clear? Or should we go over that again? Be honest. Don't make promises you can't keep or statements you aren't sure of. If you don't know something, ask somebody who does or look it up. Be exact. Let's meet at 10 sharp. Respect the listener. Be careful to extend full respect to women buyers. Don't ignore them and don't talk down to them. Provide good environment. That means no distractions. Don't let the telephone interrupt a conversation with a customer. Have the operator take a message for you. Keep on track. Don't ramble. Cover one subject at a time. Finally, use value words. Value words are words that express tangible features the customer can appreciate, rather than vague terms that merely describe a fact. Rack and pinion steering may mean nothing to many of your customers. Quick, precise steering does. But, above all, listen. Listen to what the customer is saying. Let him tell you what he's interested in, what turns him on. That can give you your surest lead to the kind of presentation to make. As a matter of fact, the most positive sign of a professional is his ability to listen. The most positive sign of a non-pro is his failure to listen.
And there were salesmen who didn't listen to anything I said and just told me about how sexy it looked and what a nice package it was and what nice paint trim they had and they got with it and how I could get air conditioning for only $400. And I wasn't interested in that, and they really weren't listening to what I was saying.
A good salesman was a guy who listened, who was trying to find out, I thought sincerely, what we were after, why we were after it, how we were going to use the car, who was going to drive the car the most, etc. And then says, well, this is, I don't know if you've considered this car, but here's one that might fill this need. And then he'd step back and listen some more.
At one time or another, we're all guilty of bad listening habits, one of which is faking attention. Do you ever do that? Look the person right in the eye, smile, nod your head as though you're absolutely fascinated with what he's saying, and not hear a word. Do you ever interrupt people while they're talking? You do. Of course you do. All of us interrupt. That's often because we're so eager to say what we want to say that we just can't wait for the other person to get through with what he's saying. Actors call it stepping on my lines. They don't like it. Nobody does. Do you ever get impatient and start drumming on the desktop or fiddling with your pencil while another person is talking? Do you sidetrack? You know what I mean. Go on, I'm listening. Are you ever guilty of inattention? Looking away while the person is speaking about something or someone, focusing on something else. Do you slouch? Do you turn off and tune out when something that someone is saying to you is boring or irritates you? If you're guilty of any of these habits, you're guilty of bad listening, or at least the customer's perception that you're not listening. Body language can often tell you more in a single gesture than 100 spoken words. For instance, rubbing the back of the neck or head is a clear sign of confusion, a lack of understanding. Folding the arms across the chest is a defensive gesture that says, I don't agree with you. The thoughtful chin in hand pose indicates doubt, indecision. I wonder if I really ought to be spending the money. This gesture is one of skepticism, disbelief. Come on now, what are you trying to tell me? This is called steepling. It's a gesture of superiority, of self-confidence. Don't try to kid me, pal. I'm way, way ahead of you. That's a bit of body language. It's one of the best indicators there is of what's going through your customer's mind. What's unsaid, but important. Learn to read the signs. Be observant. That's listening with your eyes as well as your ears. Now for some commentary about communicating effectively from one of our retail consultants. Jackie Cooper, let's talk about communicating effectively.
I think the chief objective is to make certain that that customer has the right feelings. Words create feelings by creating attitudes, emotions, and mental pictures. Therefore, again, I'm very selective with the words. The words that a salesperson will use during the interview, during the presentation, is critical to how he causes the prospect to feel. So the chief objective is make sure you create the right feelings.
What are the most important words you say to a customer?
My most important word that I greet a prospect with is the word welcome. I ask questions, and I listen to what he doesn't say, more than what he does say. I read his body language. Again, from the consumer's point, if I interpret his body language, I find that that carries more of the communications than the words. But the words, not would you buy, would you own, not could I sell it to you, would you own it, not payments, monthly investment, budget, not sign, okay, not contract, it's an agreement. I have executive cars, evaluation cars, not demos. I don't have credit apps. I have customer statements. I don't tell, I don't show, I share. Certainly I don't explain. I don't have a manager, I have a boss. I don't talk about discount, I talk about savings. I don't call it a service department, I call it a car care center. Car care center has a very positive connotation to it. And these are some examples of the communications that salespeople must be aware of. The words that you use are most critical.
What things should you avoid saying to a customer?
Anything that would bring a negative, such as the price, the payments. These are terms that creates negatives. Now when you buy, now after I've sold you, these are terms that really create a negative, such as, Mr. Prospect, could I be honest with you? Now if you analyze that for a moment, if you ask a prospect, could you be honest with him? What have you implied? You've implied you haven't been telling him the truth. Sir, could I tell you the truth? These are critical words. I don't say thank you. When I close a deal, I congratulate a prospect. Not thank you. I make him a winner. By congratulations, my experience has been, congratulations. You'll certainly enjoy your new car. It's a beautiful car, and I want to congratulate you. You made a wise decision. Now, when he leaves, his last memory of Jackie Cooper and that dealership is positive. In other words, he'll turn around and say to me, thank you.
Jackie, you said that the salesperson should listen to what the customer is not saying to him. Could you elaborate on that a little bit more?
A prospect can say yes with his head moving this way. See, the body language is more important than the verbal. Therefore, I observe that. Watch what he's saying by looking at his watch. In other words, you're out, Mr. Salesperson. If that ever starts, you better go for a TO. You better regenerate in that consumer interest in the product and you. These are things you have to look for that's communicated by other methods other than, of course, the verbal. It's the body language. If he stands and starts walking around or staring out the window while you're communicating to him, he's not listening. You can ask him a question to get him back involved, and ask him an alternate choice question. The blue, the green, or the red. The AM, the AM-FM, the AM-FM with cassette. Get him back into the conversation, get his interest, and ask for his opinion. And while he's talking, listen. 2 ears, 1 mouth. I think God was trying to tell us something to salespeople. Twice as much listening as you talk, you'll sell more cars.
What, in your mind, are some of the most valuable guidelines to good listening?
Good listening usually involves eye contact. It involves a smile. It also involves a mannerism. Also, not diverting your interest from the prospect to someone else passing by on the showroom floor, or even worse, taking a phone call.
A real basic question, Jackie. Why should a salesperson listen?
Listen to understand the prospect. Don't listen to respond to him. Unfortunately, a lot of salespeople will let the prospect start talking in communications, and before the prospect finishes, they assume they know what he's going to say, and they jump in and handle it before the prospect finishes, or they jump in and put in their conversation. It's very important to let a prospect finish his conversation, and I use as a guideline a count of 5. If that consumer is talking with me and I'm listening, I may, after he finishes his conversation, mentally count to 5. If he doesn't start talking again, then I start talking. I believe to control a conversation, you've got to ask the last question. And by asking the last question, you've got control. If the prospect's talking, the salesperson has control. If the salesperson is talking, the prospect's got control. It's right reverse from what a lot of salespeople would think about the conversation.
Jackie, can you elaborate on that statement that a salesperson should listen to understand, not to respond?
By listening to understand, permitting the prospect to complete the dialogue. He may give you the answer in completing his dialogue that will give you the insight, or what I call the guidelines to his DBM. It's called a dominant buying motive. By letting him talk, he will actually tell me how to sell. I think effective communication is primarily 3 things: power terms and phrases, listening to understand, and body language. Then you've got proper communications and effective communications.
Good advice. A pro knows the value of good two-way communication because the good listening, good speaking, and good looking skills covered in this unit are directly linked to selling success by communicating effectively.
If you don't like people, get out of the business. Let me tell you, this is a people's business. We don't sell cars, we sell people. The end result of a sale is the relationship between people. And if you don't like people, I'd suggest you go buy a truck and haul dynamite. Nobody's going to bother you then. You can stay away from people.
Quality sales professional standards give rise to a new definition to our role as Chevrolet salespeople. The days of the aggressive hard sell approach are over. Today's customers are well informed, sophisticated. They don't fall into stereotyped categories. There's no way that the old ways of selling cars and trucks will work. Counseling vehicle choices with your customer means getting him to talk about himself and his vehicle needs. It means offering real assistance in selecting the vehicle and providing concrete advice on the best way to purchase the vehicle. Think of it this way. Selling is making a sale. Counseling is helping the customer buy. And our research shows that this approach is what customers want. They are receptive and, in many cases, expect professional guidance from an informed authority, namely you. Here are some techniques to try out that will make dealing with you a pleasure for your prospects. First, try asking open-end questions instead of ones that can be answered with a word or two. Make it easy for the customer to talk about himself or herself. Listen carefully to what the customer is telling you. Pay attention to what seems to be important to that person. Is it luxury, economy, payload, power? Listen for clues to that individual's hot button. Take your time. This is a major purchase. There is no reason to rush the customer into the first car or truck that comes to mind, and there's certainly no reason to rush into a hard sell pitch. The customer will appreciate your patience. Put yourself in the customer's place, which in many cases will not be as easy as it sounds, but real counseling demands that you try. Make an effort to understand the lifestyle they lead, the problem they're trying to solve, the self-image they seem to have. Relate to it. And finally, let the customer know you truly want them to make the decision that's right for them. Reassure them that their best interests are uppermost in your mind. If you can build these techniques into your sales approach, customers will see you as being on their side, the two of you as a team working to choose the right vehicle and the right way to buy it. Let's hear from one of our retail consultants as we further define this process of counseling on the road to a sale. Tex, how would you define counseling?
When we talk about counseling, I think we're talking about getting the customer to slow down, getting in tune with the buyer, finding out what the buyer's wants are, what the buyer's needs are, and just fitting it into the pattern to where we become friends and I'm able to counsel with them and I can guide them and I can direct them.
How does counseling relate to qualifying?
Well, first of all, I have a different opinion of qualifying. In my 47 years in the business, I've wasted the first 28 of them going around qualifying people. Now, when we say the word qualify, that's nothing more than, it's the same, but I'd rather call it fact-finding. I'd rather know exactly where the customer itches to where I know where to scratch, so to speak. Now, when we talk about counseling and qualifying, we're counseling the customer to find out exactly what the customer needs.
How can a salesperson best prepare himself for counseling?
Well, I tell you, we could talk about that for hours. I'm going to have to give you a precept here that I hope all young salesmen and people new in the business will remember. If you'll just think back to a simple little formula called the 4 C's of selling. First of all, you got to spend time with the buyer, communicating with the buyer. So the first C is communication. That means establishing yourself with the customer, establishing empathy, finding something that you can sell out of inventory today, and all the other factors that we've talked about. Then the second C fits in with the third C. You got to make some commands in order to control that buyer or buyers and then get them committed. So as I relate the philosophies that I personally believe in, you're going to find that these 4 C's fit back into that category.
What are some of the counseling techniques and how important are they?
Well, first of all, listen. If I have one pet peeve, it's got to be this. I think that if God had wanted us to talk more than listen, He'd given us 2 mouths. But I think He gave us 2 ears for the purpose of using those ears in the same proportion to mouth. I frankly believe that if you listen to the customer and ask open-end questions that he can't say yes or no to, that you're going to get a response from the customer. Now, I'm not looking to get the customer committed yet because, again, I do not know what his needs are. I'm only trying to get the customer to respond to me in such a way that I'll know what I can do to settle him down and overcome these fear of loss. Now, there's another point. I've never had a buyer walk into me and say, give me a bad deal. If you do, you may as well call the police, get the straitjacket or something, because I'll tell you right now, buyers come in and they say, I want a good deal, I'm just starting to shop, or we just want your best price, we're going to the credit union. You hear all of that? To me, that's trash. I want you to go deaf. I want you to keep that buyer talking, and I want you to slow that buyer down. I like to ride in the customer's trade-in. And the reason for it is I get him into a comfort zone. You see, if I come into your home and I don't know your family, I've never been in your home before, I'm ill at ease. And I know that I'll be uptight and I'll probably hold back and I'll be very cautious until I break into the comfort zone. And I'm doing the same thing when I'm talking to this customer. I'll take him out in his car, not only to walk around it, that's only 50%. I call that the trade-in evaluation. I want him into his comfort zone that he will open up and talk to me, and I will listen. And lastly, empathy. And you know, I believe some people don't understand what empathy is. I think we get it mixed up with apathy and sympathy. You start sympathizing with the customer and they're going to eat your lunch. You apathize with them, or you become apathetic toward them, and you're going to broom them right down the street. But you become empathic to them. Just remember, they're about to make an investment with you that's very important to them. Let's put it this way. If I hold up my good credit or my money in my hand and say to you, take this away from me, earn this from me, take it away from me, and then you just reach over to take it, I have remorse. But if you show me a way to give you this, my good credit or my money, by showing me benefits, then of course I'm home free. You know, I say, well, hey, I'm giving up this, but look what I'm getting in return.
But Tex, how do you handle a customer who wants a vehicle he can't afford or one that is totally unsuitable for his needs?
Cautiously, carefully, and very slowly. Try to bring them down. Now, you may have to show them both, but then you got to give them a parallel of where there's benefits in that less expensive car that may not even be contained in the most expensive car. That's the flexibility that a salesman has to have. That goes back to his product knowledge, and again, it's slowing himself down that he can think as he's working with the customer.
Bottom line, Tex, what are the benefits of counseling customers?
Money, sales, prestige, feeding my ego, referrals, showing that you really care for the customer, that you care for their needs, and that you want to demonstrate your concern and empathy and towards the customer needs. See, if we as salespeople, as a counselor, if we don't recognize and realize that we have to like people, if you don't like people, get out of the business. Let me tell you, this is a people's business. We don't sell cars, we sell people. The end result of a sale is the relationship between people. And if you don't like people, I'd suggest you go buy a truck and haul dynamite. Nobody's going to bother you then. You can stay away from people. But otherwise, I feel that you've got to exercise this empathy to the needs of the customer.
Thanks a lot, Tex. Any final comments on counseling?
Well, just to sum it up, first of all, the exercise of empathy. Remember your 4 C's of selling. Ask open-end questions. Spend time with the buyer. And frankly, learn how to ask questions and then shut up and let the customer tell you where they itch, and then you know where to scratch. That's it in summary.
Here's Sandy Hoffman with another interesting viewpoint on counseling buyers. In this case, women buyers.
Consider these statistics. 50% of all women work. Women, more often than men, have the final decision in major purchases. And women have the ability to pay. Understanding the expectations of the women's market can help you meet their needs more effectively. One of the most common themes women buyers expressed was their frustration at not being taken seriously.
I was treated courteously, but I don't know that I was taken very seriously because I feel as though my husband was not there and they did not know if I really was serious about buying a car.
I feel very strongly that they felt because I was a woman coming to look for a car, didn't have my husband with me, that I was brushed off in a lot of cases as someone who didn't know a whole lot about cars.
Another serious problem many women encountered was that of being ignored, unless they were accompanied by a male.
The only time I really had any feeling that a salesman was helpful was when I walked into an agency with my brother. But that again is when a man walks in.
He went and in turn got a salesman who happened to be a new salesman. And I told him what kind of car I wanted, the options that I was interested in having. There was a car in the showroom. He went out and looked at my car, sent an appraiser out and all that kind of stuff, came in and sat down and wrote it out on a piece of paper and said, here, take this home and show it to your husband.
Women we surveyed also resented having salespeople refer to them only regarding color, upholstery, and other non-mechanical and non-financial items.
For the most part, I guess I felt that they weren't paying any attention to me, and that they were showing me things like the color of the interior, because I think they felt I would be interested in something like that.
Referred to my father as my daddy irritated me. Would explain things very slowly in minute details, especially about numbers. I'm a CPA. I do taxes and other people's books every day.
More than any one thing, women buyers feel that salesmen, and they specifically refer to men, have a bad attitude about women. Women feel stereotyped, patronized, discriminated against, and generally ignored even when they come in, willing and able to buy a new vehicle.
I think that being a woman, the salesman patronized me, and that was part of the reason that I really didn't have a very good rapport with him.
I think that salespeople have to be aware that there are more and more single people that come in to make major purchases with a very serious intent to buy. And they have to cater to the single woman of any age, that she may need some information, to be aware that she may need technical information, and that she is serious and is going to buy, and that she should be shown the same courtesy and service and interest that they do to a man.
Overall, today's women buyers expect to be treated as women, but given the same respect, interest, and information as men. They expect a full presentation, technical, mechanical, financial. Women are experienced shoppers. They look for value, durability, quality, and overall cost of operation. On the negative side, women buyers express their frustration of being patronized, of not being taken seriously, of not being able to trust salesmen. Women come into the market on the defensive. So to effectively sell to women, to begin by showing respect and establishing trust. The key to selling to women is to give them the same respect and consideration as men. They expect to be taken seriously, given fair treatment, and want to establish trust with their salesman.
Transportation counseling. You gain the customer's confidence and trust, and you sell them the correct car in the beginning by counseling vehicle choices.
One person says, "Can I have a demo ride?" And the salesperson says, "Do I look like a taxi driver?"
In this module, we're going to discuss the skills involved in making a professional product presentation and demonstration. The kind of presentation that lays the groundwork for the all-important close. The particular skill you need to do this is an ability to make the product value greater than the price. We have an interesting example. It concerns a non-automotive product, but the story has genuine application to our own business.
I'd like to share with you a short story. It's a true story, known as the Hammer Story. It was first told by Paul W. Ivy. Paul Ivy was a famous author and lecturer on the subject of successful salesmanship. He addressed thousands of salespeople in seminars, conventions, and meetings all across the country. One day, Paul Ivy went shopping for a new hammer. He looked at several on display, tested them for weight, sized them up. And as he considered which hammer might be the best buy, a salesman approached him, pointed to the hammer in Paul's hands, and said, That's it. That's the one to buy. When Paul asked why, the salesman paused for an instant and then explained, well, sir, that's an excellent hammer, a real man's hammer. But Paul Ivy wanted more specific reasons, and he continued to ask why. And the salesman continued to reply with general statements like, you can't go wrong with that hammer, or believe me, it'll really do the job for you. Well, Paul was surprised and disappointed by that salesman's failure to name specific features or benefits. So he did what you might expect. He walked. But as a sales professional, Paul Ivy found it hard to believe that this was typical of the way hammers were sold in America. And so he decided to make a personal study of how hammers do get sold. And to his surprise, wherever he went, the experience was the same. Little or no explanation of what makes one hammer better than another. Little or no salesmanship to help him, a customer, understand the product value. And then he learned about a mail order house that was having a spectacular success in hammer sales. In those days, his company had no retail outlets and sold by catalog only. Customers were buying without ever really seeing or touching the hammers. When he talked to the representatives of the mail order house, Paul discovered they didn't really know much about hammers either. But their manager pulled out the catalog and suggested that it might contain the answers. Well, when he looked at the catalog, Paul finally learned the secret of their success. Next to the artist's drawing of the hammer was a fully detailed description of the hammer's features and benefits. Here's what it said. Full nickel-plated, mahogany finished handle, made of select second growth hickory, made of crucible cast steel, claws split to a fine point, faces and claws tempered just right, and put on with iron wedges. For the first time, Paul Ivy was getting some solid, specific information. Now, the hammers he looked at in the hardware stores might have had those features too, but if they did, he didn't see them, and nobody told him about them or demonstrated them to him. And that brings me to one of the most remarkable principles of merchandising and selling. 9 out of 10 people do not see what they look at. Let me show you what I mean. Look at this hammer. This hammer is fully nickel-plated. Now, maybe some of the other hammers you've looked at were also fully nickel-plated, but then again, maybe they weren't. But this one is, and I can guarantee it. The handle of this hammer is made of second growth hickory, specially selected for this purpose. And look at its fine, smooth mahogany finish. It really feels good in my hand. But there's a lot more than just these features. For example, this hammer is made of crucible cast steel, and that's some tough steel. Its face and claws are tempered just right. You can pull out a big spike with this hammer, and the claws won't break. I was nearly 12 years old before I knew a hammer was supposed to have more than one claw. Ours at home was always broken off. And here, look at how these claws are split to a fine point. That'll come in handy when you want to pull some of those fine nails that always seem to bend just as you're driving them home. Now take a look at this. Notice that the handle is put on with an iron wedge so that it won't come flying off just as you're about to swing it. Now that's an important benefit. Do you know what I've just done? I've taken the value out of this hammer and made it visible to you more effectively than even the catalog description could. Now, do you think a person could come into a sales room and look at an automobile and immediately see the aerodynamic styling, the luxurious comfort, the interior roominess, the fuel-efficient performance? Did you ever wonder why your competitor sometimes takes business away from you? You may have better merchandise, but sometimes you lose out because your competitor makes the customer see more value in his merchandise. Remember, customers buy where they see the most value for the money.
Effective product presentation and demonstration begins with an understanding of product appeal in terms of basic human needs and wants. The mistake some salespeople make is to cover all the technical features without explaining how the product will benefit the buyer. In other words, how will it satisfy the customer's needs and wants? A laundry list of technical features doesn't answer those needs. It isn't selling. Let me illustrate. Suppose I'm trying to sell you an engine, and this is what I tell you about it. It has a displacement of 1.6 liters, it has a 2-barrel carburetor, overhead cam, a 3.23-inch bore and a 2.98-inch stroke. It generates 65 horsepower at 5,200 RPM. It turns up 80 foot-pounds torque at 3,200 RPM. Will you buy this engine from me? No. Why not? What haven't I told you about it? Of course, I haven't told you what it will do for you. I've told you everything about the engine except how it will benefit you. But suppose I add one more item. Suppose I tell you that this engine in that vehicle with a 5-speed manual transmission can get up to 46 miles per gallon of gasoline on the highway. Now we're talking. Now I'm appealing to you in terms of benefits to you, the customer. It's the same in selling anything, a car, a truck, or anything else. The product, whatever it is, must be presented in terms of customer benefits. It must appeal to basic human wants and needs, basic desires. To dramatize the basis of an effective walk-around presentation, let's see a truck example as found in your product training material.
The first position is at the front end, where you'll cover power and efficiency. Moving to the passenger side, or position 2, means talking about built-in toughness and quality. Position 3 is at the rear of the truck, where you talk about utility and versatility. The fourth position is the driver's side, where you cover exterior styling and features. And finally, inside the cab, direct your prospect's attention to the truck's comfort and convenience features.
At each position, the purpose of the presentation is to build value and justify price. Watch how this is done at position 5 in the walk-around. Remember, product features must be converted to customer benefits based on the specific customer needs.
Point out the interior luxury of the trim level, such as this Tahoe with a plush 3-passenger bench seat in a choice of vinyl or custom cloth trim, color-keyed carpeting, full-length color-keyed headliner, plus full-gauge instrumentation. You may want to remind your prospects that they can order optional high-back bucket seats for any trim level in a variety of available vinyl or fabric trims. S10 adds comfort with a full range of options, so be sure to demonstrate those on your S10, which may include 6-position comfort tilt steering wheel, power steering, air conditioning, plus a wide choice of Delco sound systems for your listening pleasure. And you should mention that other important options are available, such as power windows, powered door locks for added security. Of course, these are just a few S10 options. The S10 program on this video disc and your other training materials have more sales information you'll want to pass on. Okay, now you have your prospect in the perfect spot for a demonstration drive.
Now that you've reacquainted yourself with the basics of presenting the product, consider the process incomplete without the demonstration drive. Among all the selling skills you have at your disposal, none is more powerful. The demonstration drive is where customer and vehicle come together for the first time, and the bond that forms there is often the cement that keeps the deal together should the going get tough. It's where the customer takes emotional possession of the vehicle and can't bear to let it go. The difference between his old car and the new one is often so great that it hurts to go home without the new one. Let's hear some points from one of our retail consultants. What is your technique for introducing the demo drive?
Well, it is my opinion, Jack, that I don't think the salesperson should ever ask the prospect if they would like a demo ride. Chevrolet just made a survey, and they found out that most of the people who come in to look at a car want a demo ride. So I would just assume that without asking them. But occasionally you'll get somebody that doesn't want to spend a salesperson's time and get obligated to them. If you ask them, they might say no. So what I'd like to do is, after I make the outside feature presentation, I would get them in the front seat of the car and show them something about the new dash, or the smart stick, or something that is on our product that was not on his product. Then you can do it with enthusiasm. Once I get him in the car then, get the person in the car, then I slide them over and I'll go on a demo ride without ever asking them, and the feature presentation flows right into the demonstration ride. And I guess the most important thing, Jack, about making a demonstration ride, you know, we start with the meeting and the greeting, and then we qualify, and all the time we're doing these things, and then the feature presentation and the demonstration, the customer gets an emotional high. And when he's at the peak of his emotion, that is the time to do a trial close to see if he is a buyer today.
What you're talking about is using the demo drive as a selling tool. Have you got any further comments?
Well, Jack, the feature presentation, you showed him the product, and the only thing the demonstration ride is you're proving what you just told him. So they go hand in glove, and you can't do one without the other. They got to work together. Here it is. Now let me prove it to you that it's what I said it was. That's all it is.
Now let's see a role-play example of a basic demonstration drive.
Now here's a celebrity equipped the way we've been talking about. Remember what I said about quick starts? That's what computer command control can mean for cold or warm weather starts. Step inside. There's something else I'd like to show you. Mr. Adams, since this is going to be Mrs. Adams' car, maybe she ought to sit in the front. Good. Now, Mrs. Adams, quick starts are one thing, but you asked about whether the car would stall during a turn.
That's right.
Well, the only way I can prove that to you is out on the road. So let's take the car around the corner, and I'll show you what I mean. Now, Mrs. Adams, notice as we turn out of the lot that the engine has no hesitation whatsoever, even though we've just started. Now, as you know, the Celebrity has front-wheel drive, which contributes to improved traction since the weight of the engine is over the drive wheels. That's a real benefit when it rains or snows.
I was always getting stuck in the snow in our car. What do you think, Bob?
That sounds good to me. Pushing you out of a snowdrift is definitely not my idea of fun.
Something else you mentioned, Mrs. Adams, was maneuverability. Let me show you how tightly the Celebrity can turn in a confined area. What do you think? Is that what you want when you say maneuverability?
Yes, I could never turn this tightly in our car.
We talked about rack and pinion steering for precise handling and a good feel of the road, but that doesn't mean you have to feel every bump in the road. Notice how the car glides over these railroad tracks. Isn't that smooth?
Yes, it is. That's surprising.
That's the result of McPherson strut front suspension and coil springs at all four wheels.
I remember you mentioning that back at the showroom.
Yes, and we also covered the engine. I believe that's when you asked about performance, Mr. Adams?
That's right. We're dropping down in engine size compared to our old car. I just want to be sure we're not sacrificing too much.
Well, performance is important when you're passing a slow-moving vehicle on a two-lane highway like this. We've got a nice clear stretch ahead of us, so let's ease on around and kick down into passing gear. Notice the ample power in spite of the engine size, Mr. Adams?
Not bad. Now, is this the biggest engine in the lineup?
No, there's a larger version that would be perfect for that boat trailer of yours.
Oh, how in the world did you know about that?
Well, I noticed the trailer hitch on the back of your present car and the fishing tackle in the back seat, so I just sort of put two and two together.
You keep that up, and my sales resistance doesn't stand a chance.
Why, that's the whole idea, Mr. Adams. I thought this would be a good place to relax for a minute and maybe go over any questions you might have.
Well, really just one. What's your best price on this particular model?
I don't have my calculator with me, but I'll be happy to figure that out when we get back to the dealership. Why don't we start back now? Oh, Mrs. Adams, why don't you take the wheel? That way you can see for yourself whether the car has any tendency to stall during a turn. Don't worry, it won't. Just take us back to that cul-de-sac where we made the circular turns.
It feels a little different going around corners.
You don't mean the engine is hesitating, do you?
No, the engine runs fine.
It just handles a bit differently than our old car. The difference is probably because front-wheel drive pulls the car along instead of pushing it the way rear-wheel drive does. You'll really appreciate that during the winter when there's snow and ice on the road. Mr. Adams, you've been a real prince back there. Why don't you switch with Mrs. Adams and take us back to the dealership?
Okay, here we are. Where should I park it?
Well, why don't you just pull it into that soul lane in the service department?
Whoa, we haven't agreed to buy this car.
We were thinking more in terms of a beige color. Do you want the car in beige?
Well, that depends on what kind of a price you come up with on that little calculator of yours.
Right, and I promised you that as soon as we got back to the dealership. If you'll just pull into that lane next to the showroom, we'll get started on it right away.
Okay.
Okay, Clint, could you now summarize for us the importance and benefits of product presentation and demonstration?
Summarizing the feature presentation and demonstration, the only thing I can tell you is that it is a professional way to do it. Our industry is changing, and it's changing faster than I have ever seen it change since World War II. We are going into an era of professionalism. A feature presentation, a demonstration ride is all part of being a professional in this industry.
In addition to what Clint has told us, our research has determined that the following factors strongly influence the customer's buying decision during the product presentation and demonstration steps to a sale. The steps include the presentation of the standard features of the product, the styling, the engineering features, as well as the comfort and convenience features. Also having a strong bearing on the sale are details of fuel economy, roominess, quality, and where it applies, the front-wheel drive story. Not to be overlooked as a buying factor are the Chevrolet warranty and the GM protection plan. In the demonstration phase, it's important not only to offer a demonstration drive, but also to have a clean vehicle, to let the customer drive, to point out the key features during the drive. And as Clint also pointed out, the drive must be accompanied by the salesperson. Chevrolet's 7-point passenger car walk-around and the 5-step truck walk-around were developed specifically to help you organize product facts and features in an effective way. So build your own presentation and demonstration efforts around these important work tools and move one step closer to closing the sale.
That you must try to sell out of stock first, because a customer will shop for 6 weeks, make a decision in 6 minutes, and want the delivery in 6 seconds.
An effective, well-planned product presentation and demonstration are key steps in developing a professional sales approach. Directly related to this is finding the right car or truck for your customer. There are 4 basic sources: selling from stock, selling from inbound, using the locator, and ordering the vehicle. A professional salesperson must have the flexibility to determine which source is most appropriate. You will need to acquaint yourself with your dealership policies relative to inbound, use of the locator, or ordering a vehicle. But generally, everyone agrees that the most desirable source for both the customer, you, and your dealership is selling from stock. So in this selling skills unit, we're going to be concentrating on selling from stock. In the early days of automobile retailing, selling from stock was almost unheard of. In most dealerships, the only new cars the dealer owned were the showroom models and a demo. If you wanted to buy a new car, you went into the dealership, looked over the current models, made your decision of color and trim, and then placed your order with the salesman. Of course, you had to wait several months for delivery. Customers began to resent this. They wanted to be able to buy the vehicle of their choice off the shelf, the same as they would a suit of clothes or a new dress. They didn't want to wait for delivery. As the business became more and more competitive, most dealers found that the only way to meet customer demand for immediate delivery was to stock a large number of models with different equipment, options, colors, and trims, and have them ready for instant delivery. This proved to be a big attraction to customers because they didn't have to wait for delivery. But selling from stock isn't just a matter of taking the customer out on the lot and letting him make his selection. Recent Chevrolet research points out that 80% of all ups walk, and many of them walked because the vehicle of their preference was not in stock. But we have learned in this Selling Skills series that people walk and shop until they meet a professional salesperson, a salesperson who can help them select a vehicle from inventory. This unit can help you stop the walk and increase your earnings too by selling from stock. And for some interesting pointers on that, let's hear from one of our retail consultants.
In selling from stock, we should always keep in mind our 4 C's of selling. First, communicate with the buyer, spend time, establish empathy, sell yourself, and also sell from stock. Now to do that, we have to make commands in order to control the customer. And then to get that customer under our control, we have to get that customer committed. In short, I think would just say more walkie-walkie, less talkie-talkie. You know, you should train yourself every day, realizing in order to sell from stock, you have to know what your inventory is. So you walk your inventory. You spend time. You're only talking about a few minutes every day. Whether you're selling cars or whether you're selling trucks, there's no difference in knowing what you've got to sell. You and I know we can't sell from an empty store. So we go out and see what we have on the shelf. This is true here. See what's come in. See what's being prepped. Find out what's already prepped, what's available. What I'm saying is you must know by the day the status of your inventory in cars and trucks, that when a customer makes their appearance or you are prospecting, you're able to match that customer with what you have. Now, I think one of the best techniques, for me at least, and I recommend it for you, is in using the 2nd and 3rd C, command in order to control. Don't ask a customer, would you like to go out and see the car? Would you like to drive? Would you like to look inside? Command the customer, follow me. And just walk casually, lead the customer. Never let the customer walk ahead of you. You don't have to push them, you lead them. And when you get to the car, just walk over and open the door. Say, get in, I have something I want to show you. I want to explain the features of this car. You see, that's the way you get them involved in your inventory. What I'm endeavoring to do, again, whether I'm selling a car or a truck, is to portray a professional image that not only do I know my product, but I know what I have available, and I know that I can take you there and show you how it's going to benefit you today. What we have to realize is that benefits are something that can be pyramided, that can be built up. That is your gross, that's your volume right there. But price always remains stable. It's your job and my job to justify the price. Just by reading from an inventory card, you cannot sell to the senses of selling. You have to take them out and show them the merchandise. You know, another little caution that I might pass along. Never let a customer lock you in on one choice. Ask them, now, if I didn't have that, or if I can't find that available, what is your second choice? Question them as to why they want a 4-door. Why do you want a half-ton? Why do you want a white? Why do you want a blue? Get enough whys in there, get the customer talking, and then build up how you can sell for and against that'll benefit the customer today.
Tex, how do you switch a customer off a vehicle he wants, but you don't have an inventory? What do you say?
Well, I think this works both with cars or trucks, either way. But the first thing, I would never be negative and say we don't have it. Now, I don't want to be deceptive to the customer. I don't think you have to lie, cheat, or steal. If you do, you better get out of the business. But say I don't have the car, and I know I don't have it. Say he's asking me for a red half-ton pickup, or she and the family want a white 4-door sedan, whatever the case may be. I'm going to immediately, I want you to recognize that you must try to sell out of stock first, because a customer will shop for 6 weeks, make a decision in 6 minutes, and want the delivery in 6 seconds. So I'm going to take them out where they can get the feel and the smell and the touch of the new car or truck. So I'm going out and walk the inventory with that customer, showing them what we have. And I'm going to ask questions such as, now, why does it have to be red? What is your second choice? I'm going to try to plant into the mind of the buyer that if I don't have it, possibly it could be located, but I might even begin to creep into the fear clothes a little by pointing out, by buying today, we know what the value of your trade-in. We know also that there could be price increases. Or you could bring up all these factors, kind of back the hearse up in the front living room, so to speak. When you buy insurance, I want to apply that same principle to selling the car. We can take our competitors, importers, for instance. They don't have an unlimited inventory, and they seem to sell from stock. And the way they do it is by product knowledge, the advantages of how to sell for and against something. Just remember, the customer has probably been shopping, and that's fine. Just remember, a shopper is a buyer that hadn't found a salesperson yet. Remember that. And you may say, well, shoppers are liars. Yes, and liars are buyers. The point I want to make with you is if you'll spend time with that customer, showing that customer what you have, get them into the comfort zone, they're going to buy that car or truck from you. I can promise you that.
Thank you very much, Tex. Any final thoughts on selling from stock?
The only thing is, as I've said before, never tell the customer you don't have it. Spend time with the buyer. Slow the buyer down. Slow yourself down. Don't walk your inventory. Know what you've got in stock. And also, stay away from the easy way out. We can always build you a car. Because once the customer decides to buy, they're going to find that car someplace. And by having your inventory, selling out inventory is just a case of going back to your professional steps in selling. And I don't see the major problem there. But if you'll just spend time with the buyer, you can sell what you've got.
Thanks, Tex. Let's summarize this subject of selling from stock. In our modern era, it's a function of inventory, demand, and product availability as to whether to sell from stock or go to other sources. As we've said, the most desirable source is to sell from stock. Walk your inventory daily so that you know what's there. Keep up with your status reports so that you know what's inbound. Be prepared to use the locator or order the vehicle if that's what the situation requires. If you have a customer who wants a model you don't have in stock, take them out to the lot and show them a model that comes closest to what they asked for. Then put your sales skills to work and sell what you have. Even if you have less inventory than you'd like to have, experts continually emphasize the high percentage of customers who are willing to consider a vehicle which is close to their requirements when it's presented in a professional manner.